what we will do today. And for those of you who have renew relationship updates, can we see whether we can scroll down the slides? Learn, regulatory updates, learn new stuff. Last year, someone said, wife. Not a bad place, at least you know that everyone here is focused on compliance and integrity and value. So, I wish you well. Buffet lunch, very nice. Export control updates, understanding the latest updates. Yes, I think over time, everyone has seen GIO as the fora where we get these updates, and I think you will not be disappointed as you get these updates from various countries. We again encourage you to engage with the speakers, the regulators, outside of the stage. Approach them with your questions, insights, but don't harass them. Okay, very nice. Any more responses? I think we are good. Let's perhaps transition to an app that you ought to have. It's this thing called the CVent. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you have come, this is your first GIO? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, so the majority of you here are fairly seasoned. The new ones who have joined us for your maiden GIO, again, a warm welcome. You want to see on your table, there is a pamphlet that tells you about this thing called CVent. And this is a repository that will be very useful to you. Firstly, it would have a list of all the people who are attending here. At least you know who are here. And if you see some names, maybe you might be excited to know that you can reconnect. It'll also tell you about the sessions that are ongoing. And here, for those of us who are dialing in virtually, you will need to have to activate some components of it that I'm going to walk through. So let's move over here and let's try this now. For those of us who haven't had CVent, scan the QR code, download the app. You can use the Shangri-La Wi-Fi that automatically connects. And once you get into this, you enter in your first name, your last name, the email address that you have registered to come here. You'll receive a prompt. I think many of you already are on CVent. I went through the list and I've seen hundreds of names. So that's great. Let's go on to the next slide. After you have had the QR code downloaded and you are onto CVent, can we see, let's see whether anyone's still struggling with CVent? Very good. All of you are on CVent. You will see a schedule. What does that mean? Well, it tells you the run of the day. It tells you the profile of the speakers, including the featured speakers that we have. So today, as with past GIOs, we are not going to read extensively from the bio or even reference the bio, because if you are interested, you'll be able to find the speakers' bios there, and you'll get to learn about the speakers. And you can also use this feature, the next slide, to ask your questions. And we're going to test that out to see whether it works. So, as part of every good lines of defense, we've got to test. So we're going to test to see whether CVent works for you. Let's go for the next slide. And let's try now, shall we? Shall we try to see whether you can ask a question that you feel that perhaps I haven't already not answered? Could you get onto CVent and try and see whether it's working? Because you really need for this later, if you want to ask the questions to those who are leading the regulatory updates, especially since a majority of you are very interested in the updates. So let's try. Put in a test question. I'm going to look to the podium at the back to see whether the organizers are able to receive questions. And as soon as we are able to receive at least 3 questions, I take it that all of us are able. Stacy and Matthew, are we receiving questions yet? Okay, let's give everyone maybe just about 10-15 seconds. So right now, just to reiterate, you will see on your app, on my schedule, you will click Welcome, Introduction, and Opening Remarks, and then you will have an opportunity to see that segment, add in your questions. Okay, I think Stacy and Matt, we are good. We've got questions in. So thank you for playing it out with us here. So now let's begin the formal proceedings for the day. Without further ado, let me invite the Director of the Security Export Control Administration Division of the Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry of Japan, Mr. Hiroki Suimori-san, to deliver remarks. Mr. Suimori-san, please.
Good morning. I'm Hiroki Suemori, Director Security Export Control Trade Administration Division, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, Japanese government. Well, on behalf of Government of Japan, I am honored to have this opportunity this year to deliver a few words at the opening of the 13th Joint Industry Outreach Seminar on Strategic Trade Management in Singapore. This seminar is an annual event aiming to provide useful information to enhance the implementation of strategic trade management. First, I would like to begin by expressing my deepest gratitude to all of you who have gathered here for this seminar and to the Singapore Customs Service for preparing and organizing this conference. We are pleased that many people from Singapore and many other countries attend this seminar every year. And we feel that interest in STM is growing and awareness of its importance is spreading throughout Southeast Asia. So since the 1990s, we have witnessed a strengthening of collaboration between nations worldwide, including those in Asia and international organizations involving the United Nations. The development of robust export control systems in various Asian countries has made significant strides. However, we must remain vigilant in the face of ongoing international security challenges. For example, Russia's aggression against Ukraine and North Korea's repeated ballistic missile launches. Concurrently, the rapid advancement of cutting-edge technologies such as advanced semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and quantum technology poses both opportunities and risks, with the potential for significant transformations in both civilian and military domains. Especially, Southeast Asia has a geopolitically significant position and stands as a cornerstone of the global supply chain, serving as a hub for the production and distribution of security-sensitive goods and technologies, those including advanced electronic components such as semiconductors and capacitors. However, we must also acknowledge the increasing risk that some of these components may be diverted for military applications, for the use in military drones and precision-guided munitions. Thus, I think it is imperative for Asian nations, as responsible nations in the global supply chain, to implement and strengthen the security export control systems, their effectiveness, and operational integrity. In today's seminar, some countries and regions will introduce their latest regulations and challenges with respect to strategic trade management. This will be an important opportunity to gather the latest information on the regulations and the challenges that each government is addressing. Furthermore, as part of our STM's efforts to address common challenges, a panel discussion will be held featuring representatives from private sector on the role of trade compliance officers in today's geopolitical landscape. I understand many individuals from the private sector are also participating today. So to effectively implement security export control, it is essential not only to develop domestic systems and operations, but also to adopt a collaborative approach to common challenges. This includes enhancing understanding among industry and academia, as well as ensuring predictability and fairness in our processes. In response to growing geopolitical risks, such as technological fragmentation between countries due to intensifying competition in cutting-edge fields, like semiconductors, quantum technology, and artificial intelligence, and the disruption of the supply chain for critical materials. Both traditional export control regulations and contents of economic sanctions are frequently updated. Therefore, current environment has made private sectors feel difficult in dealing with regulations. Companies must also manage risks efficiently and effectively, while adapting to various regulations. Addressing export controls goes beyond mere compliance. It is fundamental to maintaining and enhancing corporate value, reducing reputation risks, and ensuring sustainable growth. I believe that today's panel discussion will be an important opportunity to further strengthen our export control system. To effectively implement security export control, it is essential to adopt a collaborative approach and mutual understanding between the public and private sectors and among nations. The seminar includes many experts from the public and private sectors who have been involved in export control practices for many years. In addition to asking questions during the panel discussion, I really encourage you to take advantage of the coffee breaks and lunchtime to exchange ideas and expand your networking. In closing, I would like to conclude my remarks by expressing my hope that today's seminar will provide you a fruitful time for further understanding of STM in the South Asian region and for enhancing networking. So after my official statement, I'd like to add a few more words. We know that the current situation is very dramatic. Private sectors might face with re-export control regulations or have hard time in dealing with troubleshooting the supply chain of critical materials. Literally, there is a conflict of interest between private sector and the regulational authorities. I really hope this seminar gives us some tips and strategy to survive this difficult export control world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumori-san. Next up, we have the Deputy Director General for Policy and Facilitation from Singapore Customs, Mr. Lim Teck Leong.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I think, first of all, very much I'd like to thank Mr. Hiroki Shimori for the earlier opening address. I think the key word I thought you all can take away is that, yes, the world is getting more complex, more challenging, especially in the world of export controls. I think many of you will agree with that. I think first of all, thank you everyone for taking your time off to come to this event. I know it's an annual event that everyone look forward to. As the main host, I warmly welcome you. First, of course, I'd like to thank Japan METI for co-sponsoring and organizing this event. As you notice, this year, there's some slight difference in terms of stage, in terms of logo. I'll let you pick out the subtle difference. But I'd still like to thank my other sponsors and collaborators for this event. Okay. As part of, I think, my own organization, local branding, just like sort of bring your attention to our customs logo. Actually, the logo has changed since the beginning of the year. It's a refreshed logo for Singapore Customs, slightly more modern. Our mission vision has not changed, but we have refreshed our mission and vision statements. Please check our website. I have a new tagline as well, ensuring revenue and, sorry. Yeah, and revenue protection and trade facilitation. Okay, sorry. Okay. I think first of all, I think I'll say many of you are not new to this business, right? And you probably recognize that this year, especially beginning of the year and since late last year, there have been quite a lot of changes around the world that many of us are involved in, especially for traders, exporters. And Singapore is basically a trading country. And many of us are affected, not just regulators, but the private industry. So I think today's event is just another milestone event for us to sort of bring everyone together, both the private sector as well as the agencies, not from Singapore, but from around the world, as what my earliest speaker and Jisoo has said. For us to sort of engage and share each other's about insights, for you to ask questions as well, not just at the panel sessions, but also when you can reach out to the individuals out there on the table, to find out more about what's going on and what the concerns are and to seek your clarifications. Okay. It's the 13th time we are holding the GIO here, Joint Industry Outreach. I've been doing this for more than 13 years. I'm sure you get sick of me sooner or later. But still good to be here. But I think doing it for 13th time or even more, actually, it sort of underscore Singapore emphasis and the importance we play on export controls, not just in Singapore, but also for the region. That's the reason why we continue to do this every year. And luckily, at one point in time, we almost thought they couldn't do it this year, but thankfully it did happen. Okay. Just want to outline three major developments actually my earlier speaker has sort of said, but I thought I would sort of emphasize it. One is the technological advancement, especially in the last few years. You read about quantum computing, you read about nuclear fission, not nuclear fission, but nuclear fission, which is quite new growing up. You read about advancement in drone technology, about AI, I'm sure you read a lot about AI, advanced data model, etc. You read that every year. I think all this technological trend advancement is sort of taking pace in much quicker pace, accelerated pace over the last few years. And that also means that the lines between what can be used for commercial, can be used for military use, etc., have sort of blurred. And the type of products that sort of are being blurred into the lines is getting more and more complex. And then because of that, you also notice in the multilateral regime, it's sort of not been catching up as fast in terms of changing the list, update the list to include such dual-use, advanced dual-use items. And also because of that, I think this sort of create a lot of complexity on the ground, right? Then for the countries who are concerned about this, you start to then impose unilateral controls. Many countries have started to impose unilateral controls. You see that in especially the last couple of years. And that created the complexity brought about by the technological advancement in terms of export control. Which then bring me to the second global trend is about the whole thing in a flux. The global landscape, the trade landscape, the geopolitical landscape is in a flux. You read about the tariff wars is one thing, but other than tariff changes, etc., the whole thing about unilateral controls, various countries imposing controls on certain items to different places, that come fast and furious. And for countries in Singapore, you don't just adhere to local domestic regulations. You also have to pay attention to what are the changes the various countries are putting on those controls, Because many of such goods do pass through Singapore, either as part of import, re-export business or as part of a usual business trading environment. So in the context of Singapore companies, you do have to pay a lot of attention what are the changes out there, and not to be caught in this flurry of changes. And for Singapore, I think we have sort of issued and sort of reached out to the community. A couple of months back, we issued a joint circular with our Ministry of Trade and Industry to remind our companies here to be wary, to be compliant, not just with Singapore domestic regulations, but also be compliant with unilateral controls in other countries, because it does affect the companies here. Reputational aspect affect your operations. It may affect your financial ability to get financial transactions, and of course affect legal implications as well. I mean, to be frank, I mean, you read the news, the authorities in Singapore has actually went and sort of investigated a few companies that are involved in using Singapore as a circumvention, as a conduit to sort of evade some of the unilateral controls. Also, of course, evade Singapore controls and laws as well. So I think I do want to sort of emphasize that to our community here, local community here, to pay attention to this aspect. I think third point, of course, is the evolution of circumvention techniques by companies, by entities out there. It may not be Singapore, but overseas, but in the way how local companies are being involved or implicated. We have seen a lot of layering of companies, layering of transactions across multiple companies, across multiple jurisdictions. And the day to obfuscate the actual intended use, the actual entity that's using an item, such that items can circumvent controls. I think that's the one we want to avoid. Of course, the authorities to do all you can to sort of detect, interdict, but I think we need industry out there to do your part, to pay more attention to what you transact with, who you transact with, what orders do you receive. Okay. I think with these three main sort of global challenges that we sort of face, not just in Singapore, but regionally, the ongoing efforts that we always emphasize is, of course, three aspects. One is strong collaboration between the industry and companies. For the companies, of course, it's putting up ICP programs, etc. I think that's why we have a panel session for speakers from three companies, I think from LV Semiconductor, Veolia Water Technology Solutions, and KPMG, to share about what the companies can do to sort of pick up suspicious transactions or to report or to make sure they do a due diligence to make sure transactions are legitimate, not just complying with Singapore regulations, but also unilateral controls. I think second is, of course, collaboration between agencies. Having a faster, a more agile, a deeper collaboration within domestic agencies in Singapore, as well as across the globe with our regional partners in the region, with our major trading partners, how we work together, the authorities working together to intercept, to detect illicit transactions. I think last thing, I think we sort of emphasize also that the multilateral regime also should sort of pick up speed, try to sort of pick up speed to seek consensus on the changes to the multilateral control regime. For me, I always support the change and updates to multilateral control regime, because being a multilateral control regime is standardized across many countries. It will be more beneficial for the trading community to sort of adhere to a standard, international standards. When you have many unilateral controls in place, it makes it very difficult for companies to operate, to know what's out there, what are the different changes in various countries. I think that is another drive I think we should sort of pick up speed in terms of the way forward to address all these concerns. Okay. I think last but not least, I think I also want to give my thanks to our speakers from EU, Japan, Malaysia, the Philippines, South Korea, and Thailand for taking their time off here to speak with us, to share about their trends, their concerns, and also to seek your views and inputs and feedback. Okay. I think with that, I end my short remarks. But let's open the floor for any questions you have. I normally openly address people don't have a question. But if you have questions, please feel free to sort of shoot out to us. I didn't download the app because I hate to download app on my phone. I keep my phone very clean. Okay, any questions, let us know. We heard here throughout the day. My colleagues will be here as well. I think some of them are participating in the panel session. But reach out to Singapore Customs anytime. You have our contacts, our website address on any changes or anything that you want to find out more. Okay, with that, I think I wish all of you a fruitful time for today's event, and all the best. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lim. I think now that both Mr. Sumori-san and Mr. Lim have helped us frame the conversations, we're looking forward to the next panel. But before we do that, we've got to do what is incredibly important. We've got to take a group photo. If you don't take a photo and you told your boss that you're in GIO, no one's going to believe. So you need to come together to take the group photo. So what I'm going to do is very complex, but 3 simple steps. We're going to invite the photographer onto the stage first. So the photographer, could you come to the stage first? Then I'm going to invite our featured speakers, Mr. Sumori-san and Mr. Lim, to the front here. Then the rest of us now have to do the great migration. All of us need to converge to the center. For those of you who want to be in the photographs, of course. If you don't want to, it's okay. Don't feel left out. Come closer. Can we start beginning the process? For those of you who are in the outer edge, we don't yet have technology that can just from here capture everyone. It's not that wide screen yet. So come closer together and then we will take a group photograph. Is that okay? All right, so photographer is ready. The rest of you, you may need to just move now to the center of the room, as close as you can to the center. And then we'll ask the photographer to give us a cue. Do we stand in front of the screen? So we are going to count down to 10. For those of you who come to the center, you will be immortalized in the 13th GIO. For those of you who didn't, you were never here. Okay, we're going to count to 10 and then we're going to take the photograph, right? 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, go. Okay, I think we must do this together, the interconnectedness. So now we will say GIO together, okay? The fun shot. 1, 2, 3. 1 IO. Thank you. Is that, we have got photos? It's fine? Okay, thank you everybody for engaging in this light-hearted moment.
Say something.
Okay, please.
Yeah, can we see? No, just now I have really a mind block. Forgot my organization new tagline come back to me. Now, my organization new tagline is ensuring revenue, enabling trade. Because customs is a revenue collector as well as trade facilitator. Yeah, sorry for that.
Okay. All right. So we now move to what all of you have been waiting with bated breath. Updates, because they make us more aware, more attuned, and are able to help our organizations. I'm going to invite the speakers onto the stage, but I'll invite the moderator. The moderator for the next session is the head of the Trade Security Branch for Singapore Customs, Ms. Lim Sok Peng. I'm inviting Sok Peng to join us on the stage as well as the other panelists. I'll also like to take this moment, I suppose, as the panelists make their way to the stage to take their seats, that we will have updates from Malaysia, we will have updates from the Philippines, we will have updates from Singapore, and of course Thailand. This has been a year of a confluence of developments. Malaysia in July, I believe, had updates on catch-all controls on AI chips. You would remember that this year is also Philippines' 10th year anniversary of the 1540 resolution that they have enacted in their STMA. You have also developments in Thailand. And we're waiting for the panelists to join us on stage. Can we give them a round of applause to encourage them, please? The organizers may have to bring one more chair to the front. Can we have one more chair, please? Okay, I'm going to hand over now the floor to Ms. Sokping.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Jesu, for the introduction. Okay, my DDG did a very good job in giving a very clear opening. So indeed, the world is changing, and trade regulations are constantly evolving. So keeping up is therefore very important for both government and industry players. So in this session on Southeast Asia regulatory updates, we'll be hearing from our 4 experts from Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. They'll walk us through the latest developments in strategic trade management from their respective countries, covering what's changing, what's improving, and what it means for the industry. So let's get started. Our first speaker is Mr. Ridzuan Alias, Principal Assistant Director at Malaysia's Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. He has served in the Malaysian government since 2007, working across several key trade and industry divisions. In his current role with the Strategic Trade Secretariat, he oversees policy development, permit licensing, strategic item controls, export audits, and international cooperation in strategic trade management. Ridzuan will be providing the latest updates on how Malaysia is managing strategic trade under the Strategic Trade Act 2010. We'll hear about key agencies involved, recent policy changes, and how Malaysia is strengthening controls while keeping trade moving. So with that, please join me in welcoming Mr. Ridzuan Alias.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning. Thank you, Ms. Sokping. And first and foremost, I would like to take this opportunity to extend my highest appreciation to the organizer, Singapore Customs and METI Japan, for inviting Malaysia to this annual event. Malaysia has been participating, I believe, since I was attached to Export Control Division in STS Malaysia in 2019. We have been sharing and updating the regulatory framework to the stakeholders and also to the industry. So we really support this platform to share updates and informing the stakeholders in terms of the latest development in the export control environment, taking into consideration what has been mentioned by Mr. Roque and also Mr. Lim, the geopolitical issues and all the latest development. So the industry is having a really, I would say, tough challenge in terms of compliance, in terms of monitoring. So the collaboration between the industry and also the regulators is very essential in order for us to ensure the peace and harmony of the world. So I've been tasked today, this morning, to share about the regulatory updates. As mentioned, my name is Ridzuan from Strategic Trade Secretariat Malaysia. This is my 7th year in SCS METI. I will share with all of you what Malaysia is currently doing in terms of regulatory practice and also in terms of the collaboration with our industries in Malaysia. Next. Okay, it's with me. This will be my outline of presentation for this morning. I will share about the Strategic Trade Act 2010 in a glance, and went further into the challenges in introducing the or in implementing of the Malaysia Strategic Trade Management, sharing some of the best practice in compliance, and also the recent updates in our Act, Strategic Trade Act 2010. Okay. So as mentioned in this slide, the Strategic Trade Act 2010 has been established in 2011 and fully implemented in 1st January 2011. And we have gone through our first review of the Act in 2017. Based on the information and also feedback from the industry itself, way back in from the establishment of the Act from 2010 until 2017, we have reviewed several clauses in the Act. There are several changes that has been done during the review in 2017, includes the substituting the definitions, the changes of the brokering definitions, the purchases and selling supplies of the brokering definition from one country to another country, and also the changes into the penalty itself. We do have additional clauses in 2017 review in terms of the presumption of exports and also the compounding of offenses. So that is way back in 2017. Malaysia basically have the requirement of updating and also reviewing all the domestic legislation within 5 years. That was back in 2017. But now we have a new regulation, new instruction from the government. We have to review within 3 years, within 3 years. So for SCA 2010, it has been, I would say, backed down a little bit because noting all the issues that are coming through the environment of export control, we do have to see and also evaluate thoroughly whatever that we are going to review. So from 2023 until 2025, we are currently collecting all the informations, and this time around, the first 2017 review only involved the changes to the Act. It doesn't involve all the regulation and also the all the subsidiaries under the Act. But currently, in this review, it involves overall review of the Act and also all the subsidiary legislations. It's 100% changes in the Strategic Act 2010. I think all of you have information on this. This is just the whatever that STA covers. I will just go through very briefly what STA 2010 regulates. We are covering the activity of export, transit, transshipment, and also brokering of strategic items and technology. That includes arms and related materials that facilitates the design, development, the production of WMB and their delivery system. This particular control still remains, no changes in our current review. But what is important here that there are one activity that is not controlled under this Act. I believe that you all know what is that activity. Any takers? Malaysia doesn't control one activity. That is, thank you, imports. So under this Act, we doesn't control imports. So it is covered under other domestic regulations or domestic act that are covering imports. Most of the items are covered under the Custom Act of Malaysia. Okay, and we are also covering the proliferation financing. We have agencies that are looking into the enforcement of proliferation financing and sharing the teams of STA. We have 4 licensing agencies with MITI itself, covering most of the category code. We have our colleague from Jabatan Tenaga Atom, MCMC, and also the pharmaceutical divisions, Ministry of Health. They are covering for certain category in our strategic item list. And we have our enforcement team, we have customs, we have police, we have our border control, we have our National Bank, Bank Negara, our Securities Commissions, and we are looking forward into adding other agencies. We have new agencies that we think that can assist us in terms of enforcement. So we are looking into adding more enforcement agencies in terms of for a better enforcement monitoring and also facilitating in terms of the act itself. In terms of the supporting agencies, we have our colleague technical agencies from STRIDE, Ministry of Defense. We have our Attorney General Control, Attorney General's Chambers, and also our colleagues from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this is where the collaboration in terms of inter-agency collaboration to ensure that we provide the best facilitation to our industry itself in terms of enforcement of export control in Malaysia. So same as other countries, Malaysia is adopting to the EU dual-use list, and we have currently the latest list in our website is our strategic item list 2025, incorporating 2023 and 2024 EU list. We are looking into the latest one, pending the EU given the latest one. So we are going to do our due process for gazetting the items. So much the same. We have part 1, part 2, and part 1 of the military items, part 2 on the dual use. And I would say it will be the same. We do have our catch-all control, which is slightly different in terms of naming it. We do not coin it catch-all. We term it as unlisted, the item that is not listed in our strategic item list. But generally, it's the same. The imposition, the control, the requirement that is most of it similar as other countries, which is the imposition of catch-all control. Okay. So this is mainly the issues in terms of the challenges in implementation of strategic trade management. I would say it's from the Malaysia's perspective. I've listed here 5 main challenges for Malaysia in implementation of strategic trade management. The first one will be the coordination, whereby the difficulty lies in managing efficient inter-agency coordination among the many government bodies involved. I've mentioned to you we have 4 basic licensing agencies. We have more than 5 enforcement agencies. We have our teams that are basically assisting in terms of all the requirement. So there will be a really hard time managing the efficiency and also coordinating all the issues surrounding export control within the within the agency itself, because all the agencies have their own objective. the objective is basically different between each and every agency. So how you're going to correlate or to make sure that we are going into one objective in terms of managing and also better enhancing in terms of the goods and also technology within the requirement of the Act. So until now, from 2010, it's still a challenge. It is still a challenge to Malaysia. Knowing that more agencies are coming up, new agencies, so we have to equip the new one with the recent updates and also information. The next one will be the data enforcement. Basically, this is to ensure that efficient enforcement using various tools, including the main source of our enforcement, which is the custom data, basically to refers to the difficulty of screening high volume trade accurately using the technical data. So this is very critical and very essential. We are collaborating efficiently with our custom divisions, custom department, the National Targeting Center that are sharing information, targeting all the transactions in terms of high risk and also the highly traded goods of strategic goods and also technology. So it comes hand in hand in terms of the collaboration between our agencies in Malaysia. The human capital to sustain expertise and institutional knowledge within the relevant agencies, particularly managing skills that are lost due to job rotation. So for the government perspective, we are due to job rotation. So when we move, people have to retrain. So that is one of the issues that are lingering around the implementation of strategic measure, particularly in Malaysia. The sound legal framework, this is the core difficulties here to ensure adequate domestic control through the comprehensive, updated, and well-defined law. So that is why all the feedback looking into the geopolitical issues, the current sanction, unilateral sanction, multilateral sanctions, countries have their own requirement, have their own policies in terms of sanctions. So this is where Malaysia have to really ensure that whatever that we did, we have to ensure that it is based on principle of neutrality and also facilitative in terms of the our stakeholders and also the industry itself. The last but not least, the commitment and also awareness, as what we are doing right now in terms of achieving enhanced commitment and also awareness amongst industry partners who serve us as the first line of defense. So this is where we have to equip and also inform the industry itself, because you are the main players of the industry. You are the main players of this export control and whatever it is, all the issues, all the effort, it started with the collaboration between the industry and also the government itself. I was told to share something about compliance. How do we balance national security with fast, efficient trade? So I would say the answer will be the internal compliance program. ICP is not an optional for serious exporters. It is a set of procedures that a company must satisfy, and is a prerequisite for the companies to obtain trade facilitation benefit under the Strategic Trade Act 2010. So in Malaysia, for a company to get the availability of our multiple and also bulk permit, so they have to be accorded with a status of ICP from Malaysian government. There will be 6 elements under the current ICP of Malaysia. We are also reviewing I would say not the element, but the details of each element based on our audits and also our discussion with the industry. More or less, whatever that are, I would say, intertwine between the elements that we can eliminate, we will do that to ensure that the company have more, I would say, clarity in terms of providing information and also documentation for the purpose of the ICP requirement. So I'll just go to our recent updates for under the Act. The first one is the SCA data. So this is where I believe we don't have this particular information in terms of data from the Malaysian total Malaysian export for each year. How much of that data consists of export control figures? So we are doing it, I think, from 2020 up until now. The range of percentage, I would say, does not differ much from other countries. More or less, export control figures shows more or less 2 or 3% of the export of Malaysia. So I would say it will be the same as other countries in the EU, in the US. This is one information, one exercise that we wanted to continue itself, but knowing the problem in terms of getting the data itself. We have to ensure that all the current agencies are providing the, I would say, actual data, the customs, our free zone authorities. So I would say it's a challenge to, for us to get the information to get to what we have right now. The next will be our Strategic Trade Act 2010 review. We call it STAR 2025. I've mentioned to you it started in 2023. So now we have, Alhamdulillah, we are at the final stage of finalizing and getting the approval of the highest, the top highest in the cabinet and also the parliament. We have the latest update in terms of ITT guideline and also MYSTIC. So in terms of our STAR, this will be the scope that we have agreed to review. The bulk of the changes will be in terms of the enforcement, because we are addressing the first case of Malaysia in terms of strategic control cases that was given, that was tried in the court. So there is a lot of issues of technicality that was highlighted, including the testing of the items, whether it is control, the expert credibility. So that is where we are addressing all the technical gaps through the insertion of new provisions due to the absence of regulatory coverage, ambiguity, and also uncertainty. So that is the main changes that we are doing in terms of the review of our Act. Next will be the drafting reform. We are looking into the mechanism for notification, a better way of notifying our industry itself in terms of the item list, in terms of all the new rules and also regulation. And last one, in terms of the licensing and also operational, we are reviewing against benchmarking from the international best practice, including some tweaking in terms of the licensing procedures, the brokering activities, and I would say the ICP itself. So we are hoping to settle all this, all the review, and in 2026 it will be implemented. So that is the recent updates in terms of our review in terms of the Act. Next will be the ITT, Intangible Technology Transfers Guideline. The last the last guideline is in 2019, where we focus on the academia. But we are coming up with the latest, the reviewed one, consisting both for the industry and also for the academia itself, providing the latest development for ITT to enhance guidance to our stakeholders. We are introducing the technology control plan. We are engaging with our colleague from MCMC to come out with the Malaysian version of technology control plan, specific for the industry itself. So companies that wanted to engage in ITT activities have to fulfill the requirement of TCP before we agreed to provide them license for ITT. And also, we do have our focus group on ITT, consists of our colleague or our experts from universities, private and also public, to strengthen the collaboration with the universities and also academia. Last but not least, our updates in terms of Malaysia Strategic Trade Control Committee that has been registered in 2023. We are working together with them in terms of all the activities, the sharing, the outreach, and they are helping Malaysia STS in terms of getting information, issues related to the new requirement for Malaysia. So they are the one who are being the, I would say, speakers and also the one that are bringing all the issues and also requirement to Malaysia's STS. So with that, I think that will be my last slide. The Q&A will be addressed afterwards. Okay, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's all from me from Malaysia on the regular updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Rizwan, for that insightful update. Okay, so we have heard how Strategic Trade Act continues to anchor. Can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. Yeah. So thank you, Rizwan, for that insightful update. We have heard how the Strategic Trade Act continues to anchor Malaysia's export controls backed by interagency coordination, clear compliance expectations for industry, and ongoing updates such as the legislation review and revised ITT guidelines. So the goal here is very clear: tighter controls, smoother trade, and closer partnership with industry. Our next speaker is Ms. Danielle Mantilia, Officer in Charge and Division Chief of the Registration and Authorization Division at the Philippines Strategic Trade Management Office. Danielle was among the first licensing officers when the office was set up in 2019, and she helped build its core systems from risk assessment to interagency coordination. She's also a licensed chemistry professional with a degree in biochemistry. Danielle will be sharing how effective strategic trade management can support national growth, attract foreign investment, and strengthen Southeast Asia's position as a competitive trading region. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Danielle Mantilia.
Thank you, Ms. Sokpeng. Once again, good morning, everyone. So firstly, I would like to thank the organizers, the Singapore Customs, sir, and the Japan's Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI. So it is our great honor to once again share the Philippines Strategic Trade Management implementation and updates. So just a refresher, especially for those who are not familiar with the Philippines STM landscape, I'm going to provide a very brief STMA or Strategic Trade Management Act overview. Similar to other states, the Philippines enacted the STMA in accordance to the Philippines' commitment and adoption and enforcement of the United Nations Security Council Resolution number 1540, which serves as a binding mechanism for UN members states to implement measures against weapons of mass destruction proliferation. This law complements and reinforces other international treaties, conventions, and protocols relevant to non-proliferation, including the Chemical Weapons Convention, Biological Weapons Convention, Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, among others. Then we have the informal multilateral arrangements that provides important international norms and guidelines. The STMA applies to all natural or juridical persons operating within the Philippines who engage or intend to engage on the following activities. Given the enactment in 2015, the STMO adopted a phased implementation of its activities under the Strategic Trade Management Act to prepare the industry to comply with its obligations under the law and to prepare the government partners to implement the STMA effectively. So as you can see in this slide, we do cover the exports, transit and transshipment, re-export and reassignment, related services, and eventually imports by the year 2028. So what do we do in the prevention of weapons of mass destruction? So we regulate the trade of strategic goods, which are goods, software, and technology that can be used in developing weapons of mass destruction and conventional arms. So we consolidated the strategic goods under what we call the Philippines National Strategic Goods List, which has 3 annexes, so this one. So we have the Annex 1, which covers the military use items, the Annex 2, which covers the dual use items, or the items that has both military and civilian purposes. And lastly is the Annex 3, which covers the nationally controlled goods. So the nationally controlled goods is placed under unilateral controls for reasons of national security, foreign policy, and anti-terrorism, crime control, and public safety. So this one is the OWN's Philippines list. So we list down here the goods and the countries of destination that we find could possibly be needs regulation when it comes to export. If the items do not fall under any of the annexes, pursuant to the Section 11 provision of the STMA, we have the catch-all or end-use controls, which says that authorization will be imposed if we have unlisted goods that have been found has possible military or weapons of mass destruction purposes, or is going to, let's say, an embargoed country, sanctioned country, or even end users. So to provide more context, there are 3 types of the authorization issued by the STMO. So we have the first one, the individual authorization. This type of authorization we issue to exporters or applicants who has to export multiple strategic goods going to one specific end user only. So the validity of this one could be up to 2 years. And then the next one is the global authorization. This one covers the export of one or more strategic goods going to multiple end users or multiple countries of destination, and we could issue this for up to maximum of 5 years. And lastly is the general authorization, which covers the low-risk goods going to low-risk countries. Basically, a general authorization is posted on our own website, and it only covers specific transaction and is applicable to specific low-risk goods for transfer to what we classify as low-risk countries. STMO has identified the issuance of general authorization as a mechanism to facilitate trade by identifying goods destined for specific countries that will be subject only to a notification process rather than the usual authorization application. So on my previous slide, I think you saw that for individual, we have to process it for 22 working days. For the global, it's 76 working days. While for the general authorization, if ever you were already registered with the STMO, you just have to download the general authorization and then you could proceed with the exportation of your goods. You just have to attach it to the documents that you submit to the Bureau of Customs in the Philippines, and then that's it. You could already export your goods. So to date, we have already issued 4 general authorizations. So these are the specific activities that we have covered. General authorization for repair, maintenance, and replacement of certain strategic goods, for after repair of certain strategic goods, for return of certain strategic goods, and certificate of temporary export of certain strategic goods. So actually, we have consulted with our industry partners and I have identified what are their common transactions that involves low-risk goods going to low-risk countries that they think it is a challenge for them acquiring the usual individual or global authorization. So this is our means of providing trade facilitation on their activities so that we could promote the trade of their strategic goods. Now, given that we are all familiar now with the country's STM landscape, let me move on to providing updates on STMA implementation. So we do know that the Philippines is an archipelagic country, that thus it is a challenge to reach everyone and provide awareness on what STM is. So we have almost 7,000 plus islands, and it is a challenge for us. There's only 33 of us in the office to reach out to all of these countries located all over the country, to these companies located all over the country. That is why we have our own division that focuses on the STMO outreach activities. We call them the Policy Enterprise Relations Division. Only this year, we have reached 1,200 companies through conducting awareness fora, town hall meetings, targeted outreaches, and even capacity building workshop with the industry. On top of that, we also keep all of our lines, such as our phone, our email, our chatbot, open to answer inquiries from our trade partners 24/7 as well. Moreover, we do know that some companies may require one-on-one awareness raising. Thus, we offer what we call an in-house consultation for industries who requested it. I think I've saw the list of participants. We have here one registered company with the Philippines, and I think they have already availed of these activities here flashed on this slide. As mentioned, conducting broad outreach can be challenging, especially with very diverse participants. Thus, we conduct industry mapping so we can achieve the following. So for us to map out the exporters, to determine the ports to prioritize the commodity identification training for the frontline officers of the Bureau of Customs, and to supplement enforcement. As you can see, the purpose of industry mapping isn't just for the outreach, but also for identification of which among our ports we should target and capacitate, as there is a huge possibility that strategic goods may pass through them. Thankfully, as shown on this slide, our continued partnership and coordination with all of our stakeholders, both with the industry and the government, resulting in an increasing trend and boosted our export activities related to strategic goods. Implementing and enforcing STMA is not an easy task. That is why we keep on highlighting the importance of building partnership, coordination, and communication with our stakeholders. This is where the trade facilitation takes place. In trade facilitation, we do coordinate with our frontline officers in the ports and provide them guidelines, especially on cases when the identification of goods in front of them is beyond their capacity. So just to share, here are the statistical values of our registered companies, our number of issued authorization, the governmental end-use assurance we have provided to some companies involved in intangible transfers of technology, and the exemptions released to our stakeholders covered under the exemptions provision of the STMA. So actually, if you're going to ask what are these exemptions in the STMA, this one is actually limited to our trade facilitation for the law enforcement agencies of the country only. So apart from outreaches and consultations, the STMO also issued supplemental guidelines on provisions of the law. For example, in 2025 alone, the Memorandum Circular on Electronic Transmission of Software and Technology, use of the general authorization I've shown earlier, and guidelines on transit and transshipment, etc., were published this year. These guidelines have their annexes where a step-by-step procedure are provided, such as registration or authorization application via the STMO e-licensing platform, or what we call the StratLink system. Since I already mentioned the e-licensing system, or the StratLink, the STMO is also proud to share that from the manual application we have been doing since the 2020, we have also improved our services offered. So now we have this, the StratLink, which is a one-stop shop of all STMA-related service accessible 24/7 by all stakeholders. This 2025, we have included the following services in the StratLink. So we included already the commodity classification request, certificate of exemption application, extension of authorization, submission of reports as identified under the conditions of the licenses we have issued, and the general authorization. So for purpose of easier monitoring and submission of reports, we have also included the notification on the use of general authorization in the e-license system. So before, they have to send us a template in the email that says the NSGL code, the country of destination, the use of these items. Right now, they just have to log in and file those requests through the StratLink system. Also to share, one feature of the system that is available publicly is the control list search tool. Actually, anyone, even those non-registered with the STMO, can access this tool. This tool provides technical support in classifying strategic goods listed in the NSGL, both to the STMO and industry stakeholders. So the difference of this one with the usual long 200-page long list NSGL is that they could just type in certain keywords. For example, if you were going to export a machine tool, you just have to type in the machine tool, and then you could have list of possible codes that could identify if that machine tool is controlled or not. It also has a feature on HS codes. So we do know that most of our exporters do use the HS codes, but the current limitation of that one, though, is that there's no one-to-one correlation between the HS codes and the NSGL, even the EU dual-use codes where the NSGL is adopted from. So it's just a guide, actually, for them. And as you can see on this slide, there are also pictures attached. So we do provide these pictures to help the industry to check if their goods are controlled, not also for the industry, but also for the Bureau of Customs, especially those on the port, so that when they see a package that they have inspected and they have seen that, oh, this one looks familiar, this one looks possibly strategic goods, they could search for the keyword and then verify if that item is that item as shown on the photos. Furthermore, this year we have started our activities related to amendment of the STMA. So the amendment was mainly on the removal of outdated provisions and align with the Philippines' international obligations, the streamlining of compliance procedures and enhance regulatory clarity, and introducing new provisions to further strengthen the implementation of the law. So this one is mainly focused on the enforcement side of the STMA. Also, we would like to share our major programs and activities conducted and will be doing for the year. As some of you may recall, on the fourth quarter of last year, we had the PH-STM Summit covering Southeast Asian Forum on Export Control, or the CFEC, the Women in Strategic Trade, or the WIST program, and the bilateral meetings wherein we have provided a venue to certain states to have bilateral meetings or multilateral meetings with one another and discuss what ways forward they should have or they could have when it comes to STM. So this year as well, we have actively participated in the following regional seminars, the Non-Proliferation Regime Working Groups and Expert Groups meetings. With regard to the StratLink, this year as well, we have rolled out our workshop on StratLink for both the admin with our government agency partners and the public side, which are with the industry and the academe. So what will be the use of the StratLink with the governments? Actually, under the STMA, we have established what we call subcommittees. So at the moment, we have 4 subcommittees. The Subcommittee on Technical Reachback, composed of multiple government agencies, for example, the Department of Science and Technology, Department of National Defense, etc., wherein we seek one another's expertise when it comes to conducting commodity classification, commodity identification, and checking if, let's say, the declared end use of certain items do fit with their declared business activity. The second subcommittee is the Subcommittee on Risk Assessment, and then the third one is the Subcommittee on Enforcement. the last one is the Subcommittee on Trade Facilitation. So these subcommittees do assist us, the STMO, in conducting most of our services offered to the stakeholders. So those are just the photos of our consultation with the industry and also the StratLink updates that we provided with the public side. So this is my last slide. Lastly, as our capping off activity for this year, the STMO will be celebrating our 10th anniversary on 10 to 14 November 2025 at the Fairmont Hotel Makati. So hoping to see some of you there, our partners in the government and the industry counterparts in the Philippines. So thank you very much once again for listening and for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Danielle, for the comprehensive update. The Philippines is clearly moving forward, with exports of strategic goods now exceeding US $15 billion. The STMO has rolled out new guidelines, upgraded its StratLink system, and is preparing amendments to further streamline compliance. And of course, there is the STMO week, which we look forward to next week. Our third speaker for today is Mr. Mohammad Feroz, Deputy Head of the Trade Security Branch at Singapore Customs. He oversees strategic trade controls and supply chain security, shaping policies that keep Singapore both secure and trade facilitative. Since joining the civil service in 2000, he has served in roles from checkpoints to investigation and intelligence, gaining extensive experience in both operations and policy. Today, he will be updating us on Singapore's strategic trade control developments over the past year, highlighting legislative amendments, applicable trade controls, and their implications for businesses engaged in international trade. So please welcome Mr. Mohammad Feroz.
Thank you for the kind introduction and good morning to everyone. Let me get this. Okay, today I will provide an update on Singapore's strategic trade control, the key legislative amendments we made over the past year, a refresher on applicable trade controls, and I will touch on the importance of due diligence for businesses engaged in international trade. Before I delve into the legislative amendments, I will start with an overview of Singapore's strategic trade control, meant for those who are new to the topic. Singapore's strategic trade control framework is founded on two pillars. The first is the Strategic Goods Control Act. This legislation governs the transfer of strategic goods, software, and technology to prevent the unauthorized transfers that could be used in the development of weapons of mass destruction, or WMD. The second is the regulation of imports and exports regulations. This encompasses trade prohibitions aligned with the United Nations Security Council resolutions, reinforcing our commitment to international standards and curb the proliferation of specified goods. So what are considered as strategic goods? Strategic goods are defined as items capable of being used in the development of WMD. This includes nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons and missiles capable of delivering these weapons. They include military goods, including conventional arms, dual-use items which have both military and civilian applications, and related software and technology. Singapore has put in place the Strategic Goods Control Act and its subsidiary legislations since January 2003. The SGCA's primary purpose is to prevent the unauthorized transfers of goods that could be used for the development of WMD and regulate the transfer of such goods, which is prescribed in the Strategic Goods Control Regulations. The prescribed goods are listed in the Strategic Goods Control Order, and the regulation on brokering activities are specified in the Strategic Goods Control Brokering Order. The risks associated with such transfers are significant, and the SGCA serves as a crucial safeguard. So what are the applicable trade controls? To export strategic goods and related technologies listed in the Strategic Goods Control Order, a strategic goods permit is required. This requirement also applies for the transshipment and transit of goods under specified schedules mainly the 4th and 5th schedules of the Strategic Goods Control Regulations. A permit is also required when non-specified strategic goods transshipping through Singapore is stored in the free trade zones beyond a certain period. That is more than 21 days if it comes in via air and more than 45 days if it comes in via sea. Furthermore, permits are also required for goods suspected to be used for a relevant activity, which I'll share in the next slide. Engaging in controlled transactions without appropriate permits can lead to severe consequences, including legal ramifications and reputational damage. A notable feature of the SGCA is the catch-all provision when a transfer of goods is suspected to be used for a relevant activity, which is for the development of WMD. The catch-all provision encompasses goods and technologies not explicitly listed in the SGCO, but is known or suspected or has been notified by customs to be intended for WMD development. This ensures comprehensive regulation to address emerging threats. Moving on, the Regulation of Imports and Exports Act outlines the legal framework governing the movement of goods in Singapore, with the 7th and 8th schedule playing vital roles in enforcing trade-related sanctions. These regulations are not just about compliance, they signify our responsibility to prevent the proliferation and align our trade practices with international norms. Besides the RIER, Singapore also implements the United Nations Security Council resolutions in various acts such as the United Nations Act and Immigration Act. These laws aim to effectively enforce compliance with international laws, to hold countries accountable for violations such as human rights abuses or aggressions against other nations. The 7th schedule prohibits the transfers of arms and WMD-related items to designated countries as per UNSC mandates. The 8th schedule prohibits the transfer of specified strategic goods to Russia, emphasizing Singapore's dedication to fostering international stability and security. Since November 2017, Singapore has prohibited all commercially traded goods with DPRK, which goes beyond the DPRK-related resolutions. This prohibition provides a strong foundation for Singapore agencies to manage the proliferation financing risks emanating from goods traded with DPRK. Singapore also works closely with our international partners and targets shipments that may be destined for the DPRK to identify potential contraventions to our laws. Now, I will dive into the legislative amendments made in 2025. There were no changes to the RIER regarding trade prohibitions. We made a legislative amendment to the Strategic Goods Control Order, or SGCO in short, with corresponding amendments to the associated regulations to incorporate necessary revisions and enhance clarity. These amendments ensure our legislative framework remains aligned with international standards. For those who are hearing this for the first time, the SGCO comprises of two parts. Part 1 is a list of military goods and technology, and Part 2 is a list of dual-use goods and technology. Singapore adopts the 2024 Wasana Arrangement Munitions List and the 2024 EU Dual-Use List as the basis for the SGCO. The EU Dual-Use List is an amalgamation of dual-use items controlled by the 4 multilateral export control regimes, mainly the Missile Technology Regime, the Australia Group, the Nuclear Suppliers Group, and Wasana Arrangement. The SGCO aligns the parameters, the definitions of words, and expressions used in the multilateral export control regimes to be in line with international standards. The amendments made to SGCO 2025 include editorial changes aimed at enhancing regulatory clarity and changes in the scope of controls. These changes will come into effect on 1st of December 2025, less than a month from now. The new technical parameters reflect the evolving nature of technology and its applications. I encourage you to refer to the comparison document which we have made available online. This document showcases the changes between the current and previous versions of the SGCO, highlighting the specific amendments that have been made. This resource will help you understand the updates and their implications for your business operations. Now, I'll move on to the topic of due diligence. It's important that all companies conduct their business transparently and in full compliance with applicable laws and regulations. This is not a best practice. It is a requirement for all businesses. Additionally, businesses should remain informed about export controls imposed by other countries and consider how these regulations might affect their international business activities. Furthermore, businesses must never use their association with Singapore to circumvent or violate the export controls of other countries. This responsibility applies to all our trading partners, and maintaining compliance is paramount. Engaging in illicit practices can lead to severe consequences. This may adversely affect not only the company involved, but also our broader business community here in Singapore. A critical topic that underpins the integrity of business operations stems from the importance of due diligence, particularly in the context of combating proliferation risks. First, let's discuss customer profiling and screening. It is essential to thoroughly understand who your customers are. By conducting robust profiling and screening, you can mitigate potential risks. Next, you need to review the end use of the items. Understanding how your products will be used is paramount. This process involves identifying any potential red flags that may signal a risk. Speaking of risk indicators, we have provided you with a handout that can aid you in identifying trade-based money laundering risks. You must be aware of the various signs that may indicate proliferation activity. These indicators serve as early warning systems, prompting you to investigate further and take appropriate actions when necessary. Moreover, regulatory compliance is non-negotiable. You must ensure that all business transactions are compliant with applicable laws. This includes being mindful of any unilateral sanctions imposed by other countries, as circumventing these regulations can lead to severe penalties and damage your reputation. Due diligence and transparency are essential components of responsible business conduct. To aid businesses in navigating these complex requirements, we provide extensive online resources, including guidance documents outlining the strategic trade control obligations, the strategic trade scheme to facilitate the movement of goods, and guidance materials on sanctions lists and red flags. Our voluntary disclosure program allows businesses to proactively address compliance issues, reduce risks, and demonstrate responsible trading behavior. This concludes my presentation, and I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Feroz, for that informative presentation. These updates reflect Singapore's continued alignment with global standards and reinforce the importance of due diligence, compliance, and transparency in maintaining our reputation as a trusted trading hub. Our final speaker is Mrs. Natawan Mentes, a professional-level trade officer with Thailand's Department of Foreign Trade. She has worked in dual-use item management since 2011 and played a key role in establishing the TCWMD Act and developing the ETCWMD system. She also served as Deputy Director of the Thai Trade Center in New York from 2018 to 2023. Today, she continues to lead Thailand's effort to strengthen dual-use controls and implement new licensing measures. Natawan will share updates on Thailand's strategic trade control framework, how catch-all controls are being implemented, and what companies should expect as new licensing measures roll out next year. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Natawan Mentes.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And first, I would like to thank you, the organizers, METI and Singapore Customs, for having me as speaker today. I'm very honored to be the representative from Thailand to give you an update about Thailand regulation on strategic control management. First, I would like to give you the legal foundation in Thailand. So since 2019, we have the control of item in relation to the proliferation of WMD. So we also call it as TCWMD Act. So within this act, it empowers Ministry of Commerce or Department of Foreign Trade to impose 3 different measures. The first measure is the licensing measure. The second one is the self-certification measure, where exporters can certify themselves when they're exporting that the goods they're exporting are not dual-use items. And the other measure is included with the cash-out control, or in Thailand we call it in-use and user control. And also internal compliance program measure, which I will go into detail later. So that was the legal foundation what we have in Thailand, and that foundation regulate activities such as export, re-export, transit, transshipment, brokering, and technology transfer. But what I would like to introduce to you now is what we have been doing in the past. So in the past, instead of doing licensing measure, Thailand focusing on using the cash-out control as a mandatory control measure, and also the ICP measure. So within the cash-out control, or in Thailand it's called the EU-UC measure, we have ministerial notification and also departmental notification. When relevant agencies have information of suspicious transaction, they can notify the Department of Foreign Trade, and we can then examine the risk, investigate the risk, and if there is risk, we can suspend those transactions. And the second measure that we have been implementing in the past since 2021, which is on a voluntary basis in Thailand, which is the internal compliance program. We have received strong feedback from industries in participating in pursuing the ICP certificates in Thailand. And we also have guidelines for the industry to establish those ICP systems. So to go deeper in detail about the ICP system, since 2021, the Department of Foreign Trade has conducted several ICP training programs. So we had 9 batches, and we reached out to more than 600 individuals. And in terms of ICP company certification, we had 4 batches of certification, and right now there are more than 80 companies in Thailand that have the ICP certification issued by the Department of Foreign Trade in Thailand. So that was in the past where we have our focus on the EU-UC measure and also the ICP measure. And we know that we have to elevate our control measure to the next step, which is the licensing measure, which we have been preparing for the licensing measure in the past year. So we're going to roll out in phase implementation, and the first phase would be only the category 0 and on the targeting export and re-export activities, and also starting with individual license. So what we've been doing to prepare for this licensing measure in terms of regulation, we have already drafted the required ministerial and departmental notifications on license application and also procedures on national control list. These drafts are already completed and are expected to go for the public hearing by the end of this month after our committee meeting, which should happen next week in the Department of Foreign Trade. And we also, after that, a subcommittee will be appointed. This subcommittee will give advice to Department of Foreign Trade in risk assessment and also classification communication. And also, relevant guidelines for the industry are also being developed to help industry to be prepared for this licensing measure. So in terms of online system to accommodate the industry, we have developed a system which is called the ETCWMD system. So this system is a one-stop service system that the industry can register, and they can do their product classification online, which this product classification, or we call it the E-classification, they can either put in the SS code or their keywords or the dual-use number or CAS number, and it will help them go through all the specifications of those dual use items, and then to specify if their products are dual use or not. And we also have the e-licensing system, which will be the main system to support the industry in applying for the application, from application submission and to reporting if they need to. And the ETCWMD system would also be connected to the National Single Window with the Customs Department, which is an important part, which is in Thailand context, that every permission or license has to be connected to the National Single Window to ensure the smoother integration to the customs declaration process. And to move on to next is a capability building for our licensing officer. So right now we have a very limited human resource in my department, 8 people to do this field. So we have been receiving training from our international partner like EXBS or EU P2P and also METI. And this training is to get us prepared for the license implementation, how to classify the products, how to do risk assessment. And we also have developed an SOP and guideline for licensing officers to have consistent licensing assessment throughout the process. And also we have recruited technical experts from other agencies that will help us in the first phase of Category 0, which is the Agency of Atom for Peace, and also the Thailand Institute of Nuclear Technology, and also other enforcement agencies like Customs, which will be part of the subcommittee. So in terms of outreach, we have conducted on-site seminar. The last one was in September, 2 months ago, and we had a lot of interest from industry. That seminar was in collaboration with the Office of Atom for Peace and also from Customs to get the industry prepare for the upcoming licensing measure. And we are planning for another seminar, which will be in about December, which will be about an online seminar to get the industry ready for the upcoming licensing measure. So what's next for Thailand in 2026? As I mentioned, we are planning to start our implementation for the Category 0 by the first quarter of next year, which I hope will be in January after the public hearing. Then we have to do the legal process to have that as legally. So our next step would be to extend the type of license to bulk license, which ICP would become mandatory for those companies who would like to have the bulk license. And also we would like to extend the scope of category to other categories. So first we will start with 7, 8, and 9, and hopefully by all 10 categories in the near future. And the last thing that we are planning to do in 2026 is to revise our cash-out control, because right now what we have is there's a lot of information asked for when the relevant agencies would like to notify the Department of Foreign Trade. It's not very practical because a lot of information has to be filled out, and we realize that this has to be revised to improve the practicality and the usability of the measure. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Natawan, for the insightful update. So it's great to see Thailand's continued progress in strengthening its strategic trade control framework, from expanding ICP training and certification of more companies to preparing for the phased implementation of licensing measures for nuclear-related dual-use items early next year. These efforts reflect Thailand's continued commitment to responsible trade and non-proliferation. So across all 4 presentations, we have seen how Southeast Asian countries are advancing their strategic trade frameworks in response to global developments, whether through digital system, clearer compliance requirements, or closer government-industry cooperation. And with that, let's dive into the questions submitted through CVEN. Okay, there is one question for all 4 panelists, and the question goes, with the recent export control in the region, is there a designated contact person that companies can reach out to? Maybe, yeah, Rizwan would like to start first.
Thank you, Sopeng, for the question. So for Malaysia's STA, so definitely there is a designated focal point for any issues or any question in terms related to Strategic Trade Act 2010. So you may address your questions or issues to our email, admin.sts@miti.gov.my. So that serves as a, I would say, coordinated email that going to be to reply or to answer any question in terms of STA 2010. Thank you.
Hi. So in terms for Thailand, you can also contact us as the email tcwmd, as the name of the act, tcwmd@outlook.com. So, and we will have our officers look out for your email.
For the Philippines, it's the Strategic Trade Management Office, our office. So if in case you need the email, it's stmo@dti.gov.ph.
Okay, for Singapore Customs, we have the customs_stgc.gov @customs.gov.sg. If you want to reach out or you have specific questions, you may actually come to us during the break later, and probably we kind of want to know more about how you want to connect with us and what is the topic that is concerning to you, that we may get the appropriate party within Customs to actually address some of these queries.
Okay, thank you to everyone. Jesu has kindly categorized the questions.
Sure. Okay, so we have a fair number of questions. What I've done, not to disappoint everyone, is that there are questions for all the countries. Most amount of questions are for Malaysia, but I will start off with the question that applies to all of you, a new one that has come in. This clearly would be from those in the logistics industry. So how should logistics intermediaries handle the pressure from requests from traders and resellers requesting them to take on the responsibility of product classification? So the question you're asking the regulators is, what do you wish the regulators would ask you by way of suggestion to consider when you are facing these pressures? I leave it to the panel, Sopeng, whoever wishes to answer it. I hope they don't say don't do the business. Please.
I'll take this one first, probably, yeah. I think when it comes to movement of goods, I think there's a lot of, the ultimate responsibility for product classification would rely or lies on the manufacturer or the trader themselves. I think shifting the responsibility entirely to customs brokers can lead to issues on compliance risks, misclassification, and potential legal repercussions. So I think it is to actually establish a process of communication, process of understanding what is the item that is actually being traded, and require this information to actually be provided before making the customs declaration. So the potential pitfalls are improper communication that wasn't transmitted, or it wasn't being asked, so it wasn't being provided. So again, it will depend on each particular scenario, but I think it is to actually establish proper communication channels between the customs broker and the manufacturers themselves to actually establish what the classification of the product is.
Yes. For the Philippines, actually have issued the guidelines on this one. We have, in a certain transaction, we have definitely the exporter, the third-party logistics, a consignee if there is, and then the importer. So we have clarified to all our stakeholders that the responsibility of conducting commodity classification and making sure that these goods won't be diverted or go to the hands of a proliferator, the responsibility falls on who the registered person is. So we ask these companies to identify who is the exporter on record when it comes to the export declaration document that they submit to the Bureau of Customs. And then that exporter on record will have to approach us and apply for a registration first so that they could enter the registry system of the STMO. And then once they are registered, they could then finally apply for an authorization. So the responsibility falls on the registered person.
Can't run away.
For Malaysia, I would say there are no requirement. It's not no requirement, but each and every level of entities could apply for a permit or come out to us to request for a classification on a certain product. So the issue is basically on whether the forwarders has been asked by the manufacturers to apply on behalf of them. That for us, this is basically a business-to-business decisions. Whether or not you wanted to take that responsibility to classify the items and then apply for a permit for that particular shipment. We are going to provide the assistance in terms of classification. If there is a request from a forwarder itself, they can come to us and provide us all the information, and we will try to assist to classify the items whether it is controlled or non-controlled under the Act, and they can also afterwards apply for that particular permit. So we'll leave it to the business decision of the companies, the manufacturers, and also the custom agent or forwarders to decide whether or not they wanted to proceed with that transaction.
And for Thailand, it will be very similar to what the Philippines is doing, is that first you have to identify who is the registered exporter, and the exporter would be responsible for the items classification. And of course, if the manufacturer doesn't want to be the exporter and they want to the logistic company or the freight forwarder to be the exporter, then they have to also know that they have to be legally responsible also for that transaction.
All right. Let's perhaps maybe then post the panel, Sok Peng's panel, the first question, and it's for Rizwan. I would suggest maybe, with your permission, I will pose a combination of 3 questions for Rizwan so that the questions directed to Malaysia can be dealt with perhaps. The first question, I believe, lies from the July update issued by Malaysia, and for you who are not familiar, it's the catch-all controls update. So the question here starts off with, for unlisted items, is the AI form that the circular, I believe, refers to only necessary to be completed if you know or suspect of a relevant activity? That's the first one. So Rizwan, to summarize, is the form only to be completed when the applicant knows that there's a connection to a relevant activity, the AI forms, the advanced chips forms? Second, the audience have asked that since you've mentioned in your presentation that there are several agencies that are stakeholders for the STA, which channel should the public go to if they have questions? They say that in some instances, one agency will tell them to go to another agency. So that is the second. The third one is, insofar as the STA review goes, what are the areas that Malaysia is looking at, and will there be a public consultation for that? Those are the 3 questions for Malaysia, and then there are now some for Thailand as well as for Singapore.
Okay, thank you, Jesu. In terms of the latest development in terms of our catch-all control directive for AI chips, so we have included in that particular guidance and also, or circular the ICA advanced AI chip forms, and it is mentioned that if the industry or if the companies knows that have a reason to believe or have the knowledge for that particular transaction is to be used in research activity, then you have to key in or complete the form. But I would advise, we are also advising all the entities, if you are dealing with the particular parameter, because we've highlighted or provided the guideline with the parameter of the AI chip that we are controlled under the section 12 of unlisted item. So if any entities are engaging or exporting or doing the transit or transshipment activities for that particular parameters in the guidance, we suggest to fill in the form. Let Malaysia or let SCS decide whether you are currently, we'll decide whether you have to apply for a permit or not. Let us assess that particular assessment, your application, and then we'll inform you in terms of the decision whether or not it is controlled under the recent directive, and do you or do you have not to apply for a permit? So that will be the first question. The second question, in terms of the focal point, I've mentioned to you, yes, maybe there are some instances that our agencies requested for you to reach out to other agencies because it might not be under their jurisdiction. But I would advise for you to, any issues, just channel it to MITI with that email that I've mentioned before, admin@scs.miti.gov.my. So we will correlate with other agencies in terms of your questions. And the third one will be the in terms of our review. We have gone through the public consultation previously because that will be the flow of our review. That, but the whatever that is, has been proposed to change, we have already uploaded that particular changes in our online platform, seeking for updates. That process has been done before, because that is the requirement before for us to go to the cabinet and get the highest approval from the government. And definitely after after the new revised act has been approved, definitely an engagement with all the stakeholders, all the industries, all the executives will be done, and we will pick an I would say a decent implementation date for that particular for the act to be implemented. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question on
Okay.
the first question on the AI form. So if the item is not known to be for a relevant activity,
Okay.
is there any penalty if the company does not fill out the AI form?
So you are mentioning that you know that particular activities are not forestry activity, and you are not sending the form. So STA 2010 is basically on the self regulated act. So it's based on your voluntary submissions and also requirement of informing the government whether that particular items is being controlled or non-controlled. So at this moment, if there is any issues arise in the future, so I would say a very thorough investigation will be done in terms of verifying whether that particular action will be charged in terms of any violation or not. Thank you.
The next question, I suppose there's a question also for Singapore, and let's perhaps pose it to the panel. How should businesses abide by other countries' export controls? I think earlier in the morning, Mr. Leong mentioned the joint circular issued by MTI and Singapore Customs. And this question is, how should businesses abide by the export controls? So it sounds like you're seeking legal advice from Singapore Customs. You might want to find the lawyers on the floor. But over to the panel.
I think it's important for businesses to understand the nature of products that you are dealing with and what are the applicable controls that is actually imposed when you are dealing with such products, depending on where the product originated from or whether the product is manufactured or produced with certain technology. So every product has a birth certificate, and every country has the right to the birth of that particular product and may impose certain controls. It is equally important for businesses equally important for businesses to actually comply with these requirements. So fundamentally, it is a question of what is the product that you are dealing with? Where does it originate from? Whether the originating country actually imposes controls on that particular product. So these are questions that businesses need to ask in order for you to navigate this through a very complex export control requirements. So once you are able to pin down on that, what is the information that you require to see whether this product is controlled? Determine the control status, then subsequently determine whether I can ship this product to certain destinations or there are certain restrictions that I need to observe to prevent my company from being used as a conduit to circumvent the export controls of the originating country. It is a matter of incorporating a process to your system. It is not for you to know everything about what export controls of other countries are, but it is about you knowing what you are dealing with, knowing where it originated from, and make sure that you have proper processes to establish whether there are controls and what is the impact for me to actually move these goods out from Singapore. So these are the small steps that you can take. It is not expected for businesses to know everything about export controls through this seminar. So I think it is what we have been emphasizing. Do a lot of due diligence, know who your customers are, know your products, and then know what are the rules that you need to actually abide by in order for you to mitigate the risks of any legal repercussions on your company or being in a hot soup to circumvent export control laws of other countries.
Thank you very much. I think it's very, very important to remember those words, that you have to really know your product. And that's not a question sometimes the lawyers can even answer. In fact, I'll be a bit concerned if the lawyer can tell you about your product and you don't know about your product, right? That being the case, the questions that we have now for Philippines and Thailand are these. Sok Ping, the question asked of the Philippines is, for general authorizations that were mentioned earlier, can they be applicable to intra-company shipments? That's number one. And number two, you had mentioned about the availability of STMO programs. Are these programs available to companies outside of the Philippines? That's the questions to the Philippines.
Thank you, Jesu. For the first question regarding the general authorization, as mentioned, we are quite limited right now with the 4 types of general authorization I presented earlier: the repair, after repair, return, and temporary export of goods. Although if you're going to check the annexes of this general authorization, you will see there lists of 2 types of lists of countries of destination. So the first list covers export for this certain transaction to these countries of destination, regardless if it's an intra or an inter-company transfer. And then the second country list, these countries are considered a bit low to moderate risk related to that country, so we only limit it to intra-company transfer. And apart from the intra-company transfer, we also included there a condition that if in case you're going to engage with this list of countries covering this transaction, the repair, after repair, return of goods, and temporary export, you'll also have to have your own ICP as well. So we actually do the tiering of these countries, and then we identify these countries from low risk countries up to the higher risk countries, and then we try to classify which of these countries we could have allow our exporters to export their certain low risk goods. And for the second question about the availability of the STMO trainings, actually yes, we are open. That is why we encourage our partners here in the Philippines to also invite their counterparts companies outside of the country, especially on this coming STM week by next week. If you still are interested in coming to the STM week and learn more about the STM, you could still register to that. Although the expenses related to that will be covered or shouldered by your own companies. So maybe that's the limitations for now, and probably in the future we'll also try to explore hybrid type, so we could also accommodate those who can't go to the Philippines as well. And so far in the past, we have also included some of our foreign partners, especially the counterparts of the companies in the Philippines, to join us as well on some of our town hall meetings and outreaches.
So thank you so much. There's 2 questions left. There's still a lot more questions coming through, but there's a question for Thailand and a question from the public that I think is an important one to be posed to all. So we have 39 seconds. I'm going to try and do this quickly. For Thailand, what is the benefit of having an ICP, given that your licensing phases have not yet fully kicked in? So the question is, what is the benefits of having an ICP in your view?
So in the past, it's on a voluntary basis. We still see a lot of companies applying for ICP certification, and those companies mainly are companies having parent company in other country, like from Japan and EU and US. They already have robust system. So the main benefit that I see is that to increase their credibility and reputation, and also to form their foundation. Once the bulk license roll out, these companies can easily apply for those licenses without having to go back and start the ICP from scratch.
Great. Get ahead of the curve before. This question, I suppose there's last 2 questions. Here we go. The question to be combined as such. For all of the panelists, is there an obligation for companies operating in your countries to screen as against the US, EU lists such as the BIS entity list, the military end-use list, etc.? So the question is there an ongoing obligation within your jurisdictions for expecting companies to screen against this list? And then related to that, I suppose from an ASEAN perspective, what would be your thoughts on having a unified online classification tool? For those of you who don't know, the ASEAN Tariff Finder exists, and Singapore has the TIRE, but the question posed is there a benefit to having a unified classification tool, and whether any of you may be working on those? This is what I have.
So if I may go first. So Thailand, as of now, the industry is not obligated to screen under the US or EU or any sanction list, but once they are required for those items to have license, we would encourage them to screen through those lists. And we also, as the licensing officers, we also screen through those lists. And also the companies that have ICP program, we know that all these companies, or almost all the companies, would have their sanction list screen even more than they needed to, so which is an encouragement. And also to the second question for the unification of the online classification, yeah, I think it will be very beneficial for all the countries in ASEAN, but also we have to think about how to update those lists, because some of the countries might not have the same version of the list, especially in Thailand. The list has to be translated to Thai and come with the legal, so that it can be in compliance with the legal in Thailand. Yeah.
Yes, I'll take the question again. So for the first question about the screening, yes, the Philippines do recommend actually to our stakeholders to conduct a screening of their end users, conduct due diligence and knowing your customers as well. And that is why in the StratLink system, we have already embedded this sanction list, the EU list, the US list, and our own screening tools in it. And once you are registered or are user of the StratLink system, you actually have an access to what we call the screening tool. So in that screening tool, these lists are already consolidated. So you just have to search for your end user and to know if there are, let's say, a certain hits regarding these end users. And when it comes to the consolidation of our commodity list, yes, as mentioned by ma'am from Thailand, yes, that would be beneficial for us. Although, yeah, she already pointed out the biggest challenge is that we have different updates. For example, I've heard earlier in Malaysia, they do conduct updating at least for every 2 years. In the Philippines, we does it at least annually. Because it's required under the law. So that would be quite a challenge, and we have to consider that, as well as the exemptions of some countries. Some countries do implement certain exemptions to certain goods and commodities.
For Malaysia, we do have, currently it's not an obligation for our companies to screen against the US and also US designated list or the EU list of any unilateral sanction of other countries. But we do we do advise, because there are a lot of repercussion in terms of issues that will come towards them in case there is any the imposition of the secondary sanction to our company. So there will be a lot of problem that will come towards them in terms of moving forward in their businesses. So at this moment, no obligation, but we are advising them also to check other countries' unilateral sanctions. In terms of the classification, Malaysia welcomes the recommendation, but as mentioned by my colleague from Thailand and also from Philippines, we have to address all the issues in terms of the timing, in terms of the adoption of changes for different years of EU list, and also the exemption itself. So we support, but we have to see how are we going to do this efficiently. Thank you.
Okay, I think probably I'll be the last one. I think regarding screening, to put it quite plainly, there is no obligation. But what I wanted to emphasize here is the importance of conducting due diligence. It is about managing risks. Risk mitigation is to identify potential risks before you enter into any particular business transaction. I mean, it will help businesses prevent financial losses, protect businesses from unforeseen liabilities. It helps businesses with informed decision makings and ensure regulatory compliance. Unless you are dead certain that the product has got nothing to do with the US, so I do not need to screen with the US BIS list, or has got nothing to do with the EU, and I need not actually do the screening with the EU list. But bear in mind of the reputation protection, because engaging with reputable partners enhances the company's image, while avoiding associations with entities of disrepute can cause reputational damage. So due diligence helps you identify the integrity of potential partners. It may not be a requirement in Singapore for you to screen all the lists, but it is encouraged that you know who you are dealing with.
Thank you so much. That is all the time we have for questions, and back to you, Sok Peng.
Yep. So to conclude, due diligence is not a burden. It is a form of insurance. And with technological advancement, AI and whatnot, we do look forward to a unified system in future. And with that, a round of applause to our 4 speakers. Thank you. Okay, thank you for the insightful sharing, and thank you to our participants for the great questions. Over to you, Jesu.
Thank you, Sok Peng. Before we carry on, just to remind our audience who are online that you must click live stream to join the sessions. And for those of you who were struggling earlier, it might have been because of a technical difficulty which has since been resolved. For all of you who are present here, it brings me great joy to inform you that we are now going into our first morning coffee break. You have a generous 25 minutes of time to mingle and jingle. Look out and hear out for the chime that you will listen to. And when you hear that chime, it's our invitation for you to return to the main ballroom in order for us to start. So with that said, enjoy your coffee break, and we will see you back soon. Solid responses. Good thing I didn't say.